When you think of the God of the Hebrew Bible, what image pops into your head? Well, what if I told you that the earliest traditions paint a picture that's way more complex and honestly a lot more surprising? Let's dive in and unpack the two very different faces of the ancient deity, Yahweh. So what we're going to do is peel back a few thousand years of tradition to look at the character of Yahweh in a totally new light. And we're going to start with what he wasn't before we even get to what he was. No, really. Take a second. What's that first image that comes to mind? Is it a powerful king sitting on a throne, maybe a wise creator, or a stern lawgiver? Okay, hold on to that thought because we're about to put a big question mark next to it. Right, so all those classic traits, battling sea monsters, throwing lightning bolts, being the official god of a kingdom, surprisingly, those weren't part of the original picture. See, the earliest Israelite traditions were really focused on a high god named El, who only later kind of merged with Yahweh. This sets the stage for a really fascinating story of divine evolution. So if this wasn't the starting point, where did that more familiar, fearsome image of Yahweh even come from? Well, it came from one of the most powerful and popular archetypes in the entire ancient world, the divine warrior, the hero god who brings order to the universe by literally battling the forces of chaos. This idea, which scholars call the Chaos Kampf, that just means struggle against chaos, it was everywhere. Seriously, it was a core story for so many cultures. It was their way of explaining how the world became a safe, orderly place to live. A heroic god had to defeat some terrifying sea monster for creation to even get off the ground. And you can see this story carved in stone all over the place. On the left, we've got the Mesopotamian god Tishpak going up against a dragon. And on the right, you see a warrior fighting a seven-headed serpent. The names of the gods and the heroes might change from place to place, but the basic story is exactly the same. A divine champion takes down a sea beast to establish order. And then, bam, right here in the book of Psalms, you find this exact mythology being applied to Yahweh. The language here is it's unmistakable. He's not some distant, hands-off creator. No, he's an active, even violent warrior who personally gets in there and crushes the heads of the great sea dragon, Leviathan, to tame the chaotic waters. But here is the thing. This warrior identity didn't just stay up in the cosmos, fighting mythical beasts at the dawn of time. It was brought right down to earth, and it shaped the very real and often very brutal world of human war.
I mean, wow, you really can't get much more direct or more blunt than that, can you? This line from the book of Exodus is one of the starkest declarations in the whole Bible. It defines Yahweh's core nature as a warrior, a man of war.
And this divine warrior idea, it had some pretty brutal real-world consequences. It was directly linked to this practice of Hiram warfare. This meant that winning a battle wasn't just about getting new land. It was a sacred act. Everything you captured, the people, the property, the whole city, was considered devoted, which meant it had to be completely destroyed as a sacrifice to the God who gave you the victory. Okay, so just when we're getting a clear picture of this fierce, chaos-slaying, army-leading deity, the biblical texts throw a massive curveball. They present us with this other, seemingly opposite personality, the intimate, caring, and protective family God. So how do we make sense of this? On one side, you have this cosmic monster slayer, a divine general demanding total destruction. And on the other, you have a compassionate father, a provider, a redeemer who looks out for the most vulnerable. Let's take a closer look at this more personal, intimate side. Just listen to this verse from the prophet Hosea. It's just breathtakingly tender. It pictures Yahweh as this loving parent, patiently teaching a toddler how to walk, picking them up, holding them close, and healing their little scrapes and bruises. I mean, that is a universe away from the man of war. And to really drive this family role home, the texts use a very specific legal and social term, the goal. A Kinsman-Redeemer was basically your closest male relative, and it was his duty to protect the family. So if a relative had to be sold into slavery to pay off a debt, the goal was the one responsible for buying them back. He was the family's ultimate safety net. And this artifact, it just makes that whole concept gut-wrenchingly real. This is a clay imprint of a child's foot from the ancient Near East. It might have been a kind of receipt for a child who was sold into slavery to cover a family's debt. This is exactly the kind of vulnerable person the Goel, and by extension Yahweh in this fatherly role, was meant to rescue.
to redeem.
So what's the deal? Are we talking about two completely different gods here? A warrior god and a father god mashed together? Well, not at all. For the ancient authors, these weren't two gods. They were one single, unified being. And here is the key takeaway. For them, these two identities weren't contradictory at all. The same divine being who battled chaos on a cosmic scale was also the one who protected the family on a personal scale. You see, the warrior god created a safe world, and the father god cared for the people living in that world. One role actually made the other possible. They were just two sides of the same divine coin.
And that leaves us with a pretty big thought to chew on. This tension, between a God of fierce judgment and a God of intimate compassion, it didn't just end in the ancient world. It is still a central dynamic in many religious traditions today. It continues to shape how billions of people think about justice and mercy, about power, and about love.